Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to look at the astrological theory of the moon, or the ancient astrological theory of the moon, which is really quite significant, actually. We're looking at the first of the planets, the bottom in the spheres of Hermes, and she is, in fact, the most complicated because the moon has all of the functions of the other planets in the sense that she has aspects and signs and blah, blah, blah. But she also has very, very distinct phases, which are changing all the time. And she's a luminary. So the sun is a quote unquote luminary, or a giver of light. And so is the moon. They're the only two. The rest are kind of just lesser givers of light, let's call them. And of those two, the sun and the moon, only the moon waxes and wanes. I mean, the sun does have its seasons, which is a reflection of, it's the yin inside the yang, whereas the moon, yeah, anyway, whereas the moon is whole yin, it's always changing, it's always waxing and waning. And for that reason, it's very complicated. And the reason that it's a luminary is super, super, super important because the luminaries are the givers of life. It's from the sun, the moon, and the ascendant that life springs into the body, or the soul, the spirit, the ghost springs into the body. And if one of those luminaries is afflicted, then the body will be afflicted in a certain way. And if one of those is very protected, then the body will also be protected in a certain way. I'm talking about illness and injury, that sort of thing. So we've got this super, super important theme of the invisible, the physical manifestation of your spirit, your energy, which is your body. And the luminaries also indicate your parents, of course, which is, so the moon is obviously the mother. Well, it's parents and significant figures in your life, usually in the family, pretty much all the time, family or the marriage family as well. And the moon represents the females and the sun, the males. So if we wanted to be really simple, we could say, yeah, it's the mother and the father. But in a more broad sense, it's these very significant male, female individuals in our life. Because you may have a father and he just sort of, I mean, if the father sort of disappears or isn't super present or whatever, that will actually be shown in the chart by the placement of the sun. But it will also, maybe the father, runs off, but then there's a stepfather who's very, very significant. Maybe the son is very powerful and very important there, and there's something else that shows the father running off. So it's very complicated trying to figure all this stuff out. But so we can keep it broad with the sun and the moon, and we're going to focus on the moon here, of course, which is the female relatives, grandmothers, aunts, aunties, mothers, sisters, daughters, nieces, whatever else, other kinds of relations there are, I'm not even sure. So that's the really basic thing, and that's pretty straightforward, right? So we've got the female relatives, the personal health, and also the general fortune. So because the moon is moving so quickly and changing so consistently, so constantly, we actually kind of in the moon, we kind of have like a second ascendant in a way. It's much weaker than the actual ascendant, but it's like a second ascendant. It's that significant. You almost have a whole chart just inside the moon. And that's very complicated stuff. That's an advanced course on the moon, that one. So into the rest of it. So, and the modern take on the moon is, it's your family and your, geez, I can't even remember what to say about the moon anymore, but family and emotions, that's right. It's your emotions and your feelings and that stuff. And yeah, that's kind of true. But when it comes to personality analysis, like all that stuff is going to be really deeply entangled inside the whole chart. So it becomes much more complicated trying to discern what's going on. Instead of just trying to break it down into, it's kind of oversimplifying it, I think, to say that the moon is just our emotions. or just the moon is our emotions. What we can say is that if the moon is in a very powerful house, like an angular house, then that person will be emotional. They'll be like the moon. But if the moon is in sort of a hidden house, then they will not be like the moon. But yeah, it's getting a bit even that's getting a bit advanced already. So let's come back to the basics. Now, so I said the moon represents the fortune of the whole chart generally. It's like a whole chart inside itself. And one of the ancient names of the moon is Fortuna, the Lady of Luck. And that's because she waxes and wanes the way that luck waxes and wanes in all our lives. Luck comes and goes. And that's what the moon is like. And so if the moon in a chart is weak, then they are not necessarily, it doesn't mean that the whole chart is unlucky, but it's a big weight in the direction that this chart is going to be quite difficult. They may have, bright stars, and they may have, fortunate aspects, all kinds of things like that. That's all good. And they may be very lucky in many ways, but the invisible moon will always, or the weak moon, afflicted by Mars or Saturn, or invisible, something like that. We can talk about that. That's, again, already getting way too complicated for what I want this video to be. This is 100 is this one. So that's gonna be the title of this, the moon 100. Um, so when she's afflicted, it can it's a big weight that makes the life more difficult. And if she's very protected, then wow, we have on our hands, we have a very glorious destiny. So I guess the thing we should start to move into now is the phases of the moon, because those are her subtlety here. When she's obviously, we know, right, the moon grows and there's a full moon, and then she sinks and there's a new moon. So there's a whole period where if you go and look out in the sky, you won't see any moon, and that's the new moon. When the moon is with the sun, it means that the moon only comes out during the day when the sun is out, which means you can't see the moon, right? Because the sun is out and the sun is blocking all the other lights. So that's the new moon period, those 3 days. And then after that, there's the crescent. And for 2 weeks, it grows into the full moon, and then it sinks for 2 weeks back into the new moon. And each of those phases has significations. So in ancient astrology, we break things up into day and night. And this is actually the most important signification, the day and the night, or the masculine and the feminine in many ways. And so the moon obviously is linked with the night primarily. However, when she's bright, when she's, waxing, growing into a full moon, or she's already at the full moon, and even if she's waning and bright, she's linked with the day. And she's the most linked to the daytime when she is very, very bright, the most bright she can be, but still growing. So, maybe like an hour before the full moon is the moon's maximum affinity with the day, which is very, very important to understand. So I know it may not make sense now, but keep it in your mind. And then when the moon is new, invisible behind the sun, that's when she's most linked with the nighttime, the night. And that's really important because all of the planets and signs actually are linked with the day or the night. And if, let's say, the moon is bright, so she's linked more with the day. Let's say she's with a daytime planet. And if she's, let's say it's, I don't know, let's say she's, conjunct Saturn, right? Saturn is a daytime planet. He's an evil planet who does bad things. He causes misfortunes in life. And the moon but he's ruled by the day. So he's very happy during the day. And if the moon is full with Saturn, then it's not so bad, right? Actually, Saturn and the moon are very at odds with each other, and Mars and the moon. Both the malefics are very incompatible with the moon, no matter what aspect they have with her. And so Saturn with the full moon, it's not easy. especially if it's a nighttime chart, because as I said, Saturn is a day planet. So if you're born during the day, Saturn will be nicer to you. And if you're born during the night, he will be meaner to you, to put it very, very simply. So the full moon with Saturn will, gosh, sorry. The full moon with Saturn will decrease the misfortunes that he causes. But if you have a new moon with Saturn, that can be a real nightmare. That can be a huge problem, the new moon with Saturn. And it'll always be worse at night. Saturn is always worse in a nighttime chart. So if you're born before dawn or after dusk, obviously, before dawn and after dusk at night, then your Saturn is not very kind. The other side of it is with Mars. So if the full moon is with Mars, that's really bad because Mars is a nighttime planet. And Mars obviously is happier with other nighttime planets. So when the moon is bright, if she's with Mars, who's a nighttime planet, bright moon is the daytime. When they're together, oof, this is horrendous. And so, yes, we should talk a little bit about these meanings. Whereas if the moon is dim and with Mars, then it's actually even that is not so good, but it's going to be easier than the full moon with Mars. The full moon with Mars is not good. So so what will be affected if the moon is positive or negative? So we've talked already about the mother or the female relatives, the primary female in their life. Also the wife, if it's a man, their wife and their mother. That's the moon, the wife and the mother. The moon also rules children, generation, creation, right? So the womb, the woman is impregnated and the fetus is conceived and grows, just like the moon grows. So the moon rules everything that grows, and plants, right? We farm in accordance with the cycles of the moon. And that's because the moon makes things grow. She rules things that grow. So if the moon is afflicted, then it can give difficulties around having children. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't have children, but it's a more difficult road, to reach that. And yeah, so it's good to know that, right? To be prepared. And yeah, both Mars and Saturn cause just about equal issue. But that's getting already too complicated again. I need continually reining myself back in. So the moon is over children. So somebody with a very afflicted moon will probably have quite a difficult childhood. That's maybe not necessarily, but we could make a little guess. However, their own children is really where it comes into play, that their own children will have struggle and their mother has a struggle too. So yeah, that's the essence there. If you read ancient books, you'll read all this stuff about how the moon rules like bodies of water and large open fields. I think she must be linked with cattle and cows, obviously the moon, and Taurus and the horns of the moon, right? The horns of the bull, all that stuff. I wonder if there's anything else that I have missed here, but this is the sort of basic idea with the moon. I just want you guys to get, and she's super, super, super important. So if there's anything you understand about ancient astrology, it's the importance of the moon, and her primary signification actually is children. So if the moon is really heavily afflicted, and I should cover the opposite of that. So if the moon is really heavily afflicted, then there can be lots of dramas around having children, right, and everything that entails. If the moon is very protected, and the best planet for the moon to be with is Jupiter. By far, the best planet is Jupiter. Jupiter also rules fertility, and the moon obviously rules children and growth. So when they come together, it makes it for a very fertile chart, and not only fertile, but lucky in all ways, especially when the moon is full. So what does that tell you? If I say when the moon is full, it's the best with Jupiter, It tells you that Jupiter is a daytime planet because Jupiter is happier when the moon is closer to the day in its full phase, right? So I hope this is making sense. Because it is a little bit complicated, but I think we're doing good. So the moon and Jupiter, and especially with the trine of Jupiter and the moon, extremely lucky. Good for, wow, I just lost my voice. Good for your mother, after you're born. If Jupiter's with the moon after you're born, then probably your mother has quite a few good things happen. And if Jupiter is strong in the chart as well, good things happen to the parents. If the Jupiter is very, very, very strong. Um, yeah, and it also means that your own offspring will be healthy and strong and lucky, lucky as well. So yeah, so there's some basics. I know we haven't even looked at any of the other planets yet, but I'm giving you a little peek there with Mars and Saturn and Jupiter. So that is kind of the essence of the moon. If you would like to know more, leave a comment, ask me a question, or you can also join my Patreon. The link will be in my description down there. So check that out. And please support me, subscribe, hit that like button, smash that like button. Jesus Christ, I'm going to become a YouTuber now. But yeah, hit the like button. Obviously, super, super helpful, and obviously strokes my ego, makes me feel good about the videos that I'm creating. So, we want we want the lion to be caressed, to be happy. And yeah, I really hope that this helps you. I'm going to be doing a little series on the planets and on all the ancient astrological theory, which is quite advanced and not very well explained, I think, these days. So, in a practical sense. So, with that, we will leave it there, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.